met Kathy in 1979 when she came to one of my cooking classes. And she actually came to a lot of my cooking classes and even drove from Palm Springs into Los Angeles for some of the things that Paul and I used to do at our school on Sunset Boulevard. But what I've learned about Kathy since then, and we just happened to meet again through a friend in Palm Springs, is that she has become this wildly successful, outrageous artist over the years. And she's never actually told the world quite what she's telling us this morning. I feel very honored that this is kind of a premiere of many lectures that she'll be doing in the future. Our story this morning is Taking the High Dive, a unique journey of a contemporary artist, her life and her evolution. She paints like nobody that you've ever seen. Her work has appeared all over the world and has been selected and juried in the Whitney and all sorts of places. I'll let her tell us about her great high dive. Come on up.
I have to confess, I am a Diana von Wellenitz-Wentworth groupie. And it's so nice to meet all of you this morning, to be able to tell my story to all of you. Actually, that's a painting by Norman Rockwell, and that's me. Paintbrush in the mouth and all. It's called Wet Paint. That's the title of this painting. So yesterday, as I was driving in, coming in to speak to you, I realized that I was able to compose a couple of different paintings just by viewing the visual images alongside the road. Art is everywhere. It could be in a shadow that inspires on the ground, or a beautiful reflection in a glass, or a breathtaking bounty of flowers in a field. It is, it will be, and has always been who I am. I want to welcome you into my world, into my studio, and take you on my journey as an artist, show you my process to create, and tell you what it's like to be a female artist in this fast-paced, highly competitive art world today. Art is in my DNA. I have been an artist my whole life. From the time that I can remember, I've always found ways to express myself visually. My first recollection of my first art experience was when I was 4 years old. My mother was a homemaker, or as I call it now, stay-at-home mom. My father, a dentist who had his dental practice on the bottom floor of our home in Newton Center, Massachusetts. And my mother's uncle was a prominent decorator from Manhattan who just put the finishing touches on my parents' living room. And I, at 4 years old, was home from school one day, laying on their new couch and admiring their Empire-style coffee table. And I was looking at it and I thought, I think I can enhance this a little bit more. So I proceeded to pick up a toothpick that was on the top of my parents' coffee table and began to carve in the sides what I thought were the most beautiful images. I carved in a little house with an X in it, a cat with whiskers, and some flowers. And I just thought I couldn't wait to show my parents my masterpieces. Well, needless to say, instead of being rewarded with the smiles and the accolades that I thought I was going to get, I saw the look of horror on their faces and then endured the ensuing spanking. So that was my first taste of rejection. A very important lesson for an artist to learn, to develop a thick skin, because it can occur at any time. And from that point on, my parents steered me into the direction of the performing arts, I think for their own self-protection. So, I did start at an early age with intense discipline training in classical ballet and modern jazz, dancing 5 days a week. I also trained in classical piano for 11 years. And alongside those disciplines, in my teen years, I began to act. And in college, I got involved with set design as well. And I loved it. That's the blur is me in the middle. I'm like that artist in Norman Rockwell's Wet Paint, just moving at fast pace. And I loved it. And I didn't know it at that time, but all of these disciplines prepared me for the challenge of being a visual artist today. Another profound experience of the professional art world was in my teen years while attending Westlake School for Girls in Los Angeles, where I moved to when I was 8 years old. There I was surrounded by the celebrity culture, and I was a very serious student, and I would study midterms and finals with my friend Kim Tyler. Well, her father is Ken Tyler, who is the legendary master printer and founding partner for the world-famous Gemini Gel in Los Angeles. And while my friend and I were studying, and he worked with all of these luminary artists like Joseph Stella, Frank Stella, Joseph Albers, Robert Rauschenberg, Jasper Johns, and the list goes on. And he would collaborate with them to produce prints, and they would make books. So while I was studying with my friend Kim, her mother would call us down for dinner, and we would sit and have this bohemian-style dinner at a intimate round table with Chinese food served in the cartons. And next to me, sitting about this close at every meal, was none other than David Hockney. So he was charming. He would pull the chair out for me. He was the up-and-coming star of the contemporary art world at that time. And he would pull the chair out for me and seat me at the table. And he was adorable with his blonde hair and his round glasses and colorful bow ties. And inevitably, at the dinner table, our conversation would revolve around art. So this experience gave me a peek of what was to come in my world of the visual arts. As they say, your work is influenced by your life experiences. And in 2013, I was asked by my husband to do a painting for the Palm Springs chapter of the Commanderie de Bordeaux, which is an international Bordeaux wine society. And and by the way, there's a chapter that actually meets here at the Pacific Club of the Commanderie de Bordeaux. The Palm Springs chapter was hosting a national gathering. And this painting that I was supposed to do was to be made into giclée prints, which are prints on canvas, to give to all the heads of the chapters to take back to their communities. Now, my problem was, how was I supposed to combine the typical casual Palm Springs lifestyle with the formality and the regalia of the Bordeaux rituals? I usually have a very easy time of composing paintings. I was racking my brain. Until one day I was out to lunch and I bumped into a friend of mine who was a tour guide for the Palm Springs Modernism tours. And as we were talking, all of a sudden, the light bulb hit. I knew exactly what I was going to do. And it brought me back to the world of David Hockney. And I will show you. David Hockney was known for his swimming pool paintings. But he only produced 12 of those. This is the painting that came into my mind. This is called A Bigger Splash. So I rushed home and I gathered up all the props, all the Bordeaux regalia, and set them out on lounge chairs in my backyard and began to shoot away. And I'll show you my painting. Now, this is a very unusual for me because this is the only experience where I took somebody's painting and had it inspired into my work. But for this project, this was fine. This is my painting, the Bordeaux Splash. And I have 2 splashes instead of Hockney's one because I told the chapter heads, a good Bordeaux must be shared. So as you can see, I set up the regalia, the formal robes they use in the induction ceremonies with the necessary glass of wine right next to it. And in the windows, and I'll do a comparison study, here's Hockney's. In mine, I have put in the San Jacinto Mountains, representing Palm Springs, and Hockney has that architectural reflection in his. But you can see this is a little bit of how the creative process works and how when you get an idea, you just run with it. And now getting back to my life. Okay. After graduating Westlake, I went to UC Santa Barbara and then UCLA Theater Department for acting, where I earned my BFA. And it was there that a spark ignited in me in set design. It led me back to the world of the visual arts, which sang in my soul. And I wanted to continue in that direction, and I did, but in Palm Springs, where my husband Larry swept me away to many years ago. And in Palm Springs, I became a member of the Palm Springs Dance Company, where I designed and painted sets, and I also danced in the performances. So as you can see on the right, I am Raggedy Ann in the Nutcracker Ballet. I am so surprised I found all of these photographs. This is really where my painting career, my painting life began. It was in my early 20s, and I was definitely hooked. So as you can see, I came about my painting through a different route. I think that's why my work is unique and it has its own unique voice. And there is the rhythm and the movement influenced by my piano and dance, and the drama and the color of my theater experience. I paint in a very large format. This is a painting called Metamorphosis, and it's influenced by my set design. This painting is 6 foot high by 4 foot wide, which is a very typical size for many of my paintings. And to show you, so you get an idea, I was showing in Taipei, and this painting was sold, but this gives you an idea of how large a lot of my paintings are. I am basically self-taught, but extremely disciplined. And I did seriously hone in on my technical skills for painting close to 40 years. Now, these are earlier works that I've done, so you can see. And I needed to create, and I wanted to be the best artist I could be, delving into books, taking as many classes and workshops as I could. And I copied the great masters, the Impressionists. And then I began to create my own conceptual work. And it was at that point I was taken under the wing of my mentor, Kwok Wai Lau, from the Art Institute of Chicago, who guided me to believe in myself and in my work. Welcome to my studio. I work intensely in my downtown studio 7 days a week. 9:30, 10 o'clock every morning, I am like a horse out of the starting gate, and I cannot wait to see what I'm going to create during the day. It's almost a ritual to me that when I enter the doors to my studio, I take in this deep breath and I stand there in front of my paintings on my easels, and I feel this spiritual connection with them. And in whatever state they are, one of the greatest pleasures is when I pick up my paintbrush, I feel so at home. I become my painting, and my painting becomes me. And I am totally involved and totally focused. And the hours pass by like minutes, and the next thing I know, it's 7 o'clock at night, and I have to force myself to quit and make mental notes of what I'm going to do for the next day. Imagine starting with a blank canvas and creating something that never existed before. There is a tremendous satisfaction in doing this. But where do you start? What do you paint? Well, ideas for me have never been my problem. My mind is like a volcano of ideas. I realized that I've always had this constant stream of visual images running through my mind ever since I was little on a constant basis. And composition, although challenging for me, is exciting and sometimes instantaneous. At times, I see a painting in my mind, and other times I feel it in my core, and then I try to express that feeling I have in myself through visual images that I put together. So I sketch and I photograph constantly. And I went around the studio and collected little scraps of paper. And the minute I get an idea in my head, a lot of times I'll sketch it out, roughly sketch it out so I don't forget it. And I'll put it on a receipt or a program at a concert. The sketch on the right-hand side, it was actually done on a napkin. And these are of some biomorphic shapes that I've abstracted. This is the final painting. This is a more contemporary abstraction of these forms, which are made out of powder-coated aluminum, and I've employed stainless steel and acrylic on canvas. It's called Spring Dance. But I'm obsessed with these biomorphic shapes, and I'll show you where they derive from. This is a painting called Spring Dreams, which I did, I would say, about 10 years ago, and they derive from these beautiful organic vases that I just love, and they do appear in other paintings, and I'm still going to continue to use these forms. 15 years ago, early on in my professional painting career, I was at a friend's house, and she offered me a glass of water. And I took the glass, and it stopped me in my tracks. It was shaped like a wine glass, and it had a stem with little colorful balls on it. And I thought, I've got to do a painting of Frida Kahlo. Don't ask me why that came up into my mind, but that's how it works for us artists. So I couldn't wait to get out of there, and I asked if I could borrow this glass, and I zoomed home, and I went and I collected all sorts of props that I was doing still lifes at the beginning of my career. And I wanted to gather these props, and I needed succulents. I didn't have any in my backyard, so I called up the Palm Springs Art Museum, and I said, could I do a photo shoot in the sculpture garden? They said, Kathy, come right over. And they had the sculpture garden had the most beautiful array of succulent plants. So I set up all my props and I take my photograph, and this is the photo for Frida. Okay, so you'll see a photo is just a springboard for a painting. This is the infamous glass. And it may look like nothing to you, but to me, it was a shining star. It gave me this idea, this inspiration. And this is the final painting. So you can see how far this painting went in terms of color and clarity. And that's the mystery and the excitement of creativity. I like my work to be active, positive, and alive. And the main goal is to create the maximum surface tension possible. So by that I mean is to create a dynamic energy by employing action and counteraction, by employing contradictory elements, directional line. And to continue with the theme of Frida, this is a recent painting I did for a show. This is another Frida. So you can see the dynamic energy that I've created here. I have the liquidity of the contrast of the liquid glass-like forms contrasted with the grid-like geometric forms and the dot-like patterns. And I've also, this is surrealistic, like in a dream. Which is Frida's painting style, Frida Kahlo's painting style. Another example of creating surface tension is from my architectural series, Boom, about the worldwide building boom. I took some photos and I put them together, made a composite. I wanted to express the motion and the movement and the speed of which the frenzy of the building boom. So I had this idea to create paintings with exploding painted 2x4s. And I'll show you that. So this will give you another idea of surface tension. So this is my original photograph. It's a composite of many different photographs. And I'll take you through the evolution of a painting. When I first start a painting, I sketch in, and then I begin to paint. But already, when I start to sketch, inevitably, I make changes. And either changing shapes, changing color. It's all sorts of deliberate thinking and problem solving when you do a painting. It keeps your mind young. So painting is a great exercise to keep your mind young. You're definitely 100% doing problem solving throughout the day. This is where, this is it further along. And then you will see the finished boom, which is very different. That's the evolution. You're constantly changing. I've employed a lot more white into the painting. I simplified it, and I'll show you a side-by-side shortly. I have on the bottom right, I created a building or a city that's coming up, growing up out of the ground like a flower out of a garden, pushing away those 2x4s. So giving you the feeling that it's out with the old, in with the new. So you can see how much this has changed. So I put in a lot more white space. And you do color balancing and finishing touches. And I like to push my paintings a little further. So I add other elements. I wanted to create a new dimension to this work. I have added, and it's kind of hard to tell on the slide, but acrylic tubes, stainless steel, and aluminum forms. So as you walk past the painting, it has a reflective quality about it. And then the materials are like the materials of today. So that's what I wanted to accomplish with this painting. I have not seen anyone's work like mine. It's unique. I take the high dive in composition and technique. As you can see with this painting, light tapestry. I don't follow the rules. To quote Georgia O'Keeffe, to create one's own world takes courage. And I do have a great respect for traditional artists. I even honor them in my works. But their work for me is too predictable. I like the element of surprise. I push my paintings beyond the limits. I think outside the box. And it's extremely demanding, as a painting always takes on a life of its own. I put in a tremendous amount of hours in a painting's development, and many of my detailed paintings take 2 to 3 months. This painting that I did for a commission took over 4 months. So when I paint glass, when my paintings with glass, it takes layers and layers of paint to achieve the luminosity and the nuances that I desire. I am a stickler for quality, and my standards are very high. Now, I know this sounds really strange, but when I work in my studio, I feel that I have some sort of a spirit, or I don't know if it's an artist from the past like Artemisia Gentileschi or Da Vinci or somebody who is helping me. There's this force helping me paint. I really feel that there is something else in there's this spirit, this good energy in my studio helping me along. So I'll give you, and there are also a lot of strange coincidences that happen with almost every one of my paintings. I wanted to test my technical limits. And also, since I was working with a mentor from Hong Kong, who I wanted to be able to combine both the Eastern and the Western cultures. So I took my mentor to Chinatown with me because I wanted to incorporate all of these good luck symbols in a couple of paintings that I was going to do. This is the painting that I came up with, which is called East Meets West. And it's from my Chi Fusion series. I had my son in the back tipping the orchid plant while I was shooting this still life. And I didn't like what I had on the bottom left. I didn't like the element in the original setup. And I was eyeing this book on my bookshelf, Amy Tan's Saving Fish from Drowning. And I took it out and I slid it under and put the tassels with the coins on top, underneath the fan. Well, I completed this painting, and I had a friend from Beijing I wanted her to see this painting. So she said, "Kathy, do you know who's in that fan?" I said, "No, I don't. This was one of 3 fans that I purchased that day, and I just randomly picked this one. It just aesthetically worked the best." She said, "That is one of the 4 beauties of China, Sai Shi. And she is known to be so beautiful that the fish below her drowned." Okay, what are the odds of me putting Amy Tan's Saving Fish from Drowning right under her? It still gives me the chills. So this happens to me on a constant basis. I even have some funny stories too. As an artist, I've been working on a lot of commission work in my last 5 years. And I do get some interesting requests. I had a collector who asked me for sentimental reasons to paint, of all things, a Wienermobile. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would be painting this, to be known as a Wienermobile artist. So, as I was getting this painting ready for shipment, and I was on a very tight time frame, but my painting was going to be picked up first thing in the morning. So I stayed late at my studio to finish things up. And I left late, and on my way home, I took a different route home. And lo and behold, what did I see parked in front of Casa Cody Motel was a Wienermobile in living color. I could not believe. That was too weird. This is the night before my painting was to be delivered or to be taken by the shippers. I wanted to go back the next morning, and I called a friend up early. I said, can you come by and take a picture of me in front of this Wienermobile? Well, there I am. And just as he was taking the picture, the driver came out. And I told him the story that I was just sending off a painting of a Wienermobile. And he said, well, do you want to ride? And I said, sure. I said, you know, my painting is going to be picked up by the shippers in 15 minutes, but I want to see, can you just drive around my studio? And so we did. I hopped in and we drove around, and I mean, how many of you had a ride in a Wienermobile before? So my paintings take me to interesting places. So is this coincidence or not? I don't know. This is the final painting. Here's the Wienermobile. My philosophy and purpose is to bring back beauty, passion, and strength to this unstable and confusing world. And I am vigilant, almost revolutionary in that regard. This 4-foot by 6-foot painting, Her Majesty, truly symbolizes this belief. It's in your face, 4-foot by 6-foot. I want my work to be provocative. I want it to inspire and to motivate. In art history, and I feel that through art, that we can change all barriers. Really believe that. I've done a lot of research in art history with women artists, and I've always had to fight, and the women artists always had to fight against all odds. Despite the restrictions from the art academies in the 16th through 19th centuries, and from their underrepresentation in the galleries and museums, despite all those obstacles, I don't think of it as an obstacle, but I think of it as a challenge. My attending an all-girls school for 7 years encouraged individualism and the possibility of achieving greatness in all professions. And I feel so fortunate to have been schooled and with colleagues and with role models such as astronaut Sally Ride and Deborah Rutter, who is the first executive director of the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, and she was also the executive director of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. I feel that with talent, determination, and passion, one must forge ahead to make a mark. Professionally, I've been very fortunate to have shown nationally and internationally in many juried exhibitions, over 40 of them, and I've won many top awards. My work has been represented in galleries, and I've had many private shows as well. I am also so honored to have my work invited to represent the United States for 4 years and the Art Revolution Taipei exhibition at the World Trade Center, where I was sponsored by the New York Contemporary Art Fund. It was exhilarating to be showing with so many top artists from all over the world who I have developed close friendships with. And it was an experience unlike any other. My second year there, I had a major sellout show the VIP preview night. Out of 254 artists, most of them Asian, there were about 20 of us from the Western world. And the US sold out first before it opened to the public. It was an experience unlike any other. And my hosts there they were the most wonderful people to work with. For the last 5 years, I've been totally immersed in major painting commissions nationally. And it was challenging, but fun to create within specific parameters. Now I have the support of collectors who are involved in the arts communities internationally. Currently, I am devoting my time to developing my new abstract portfolio, which is based off of my signature glass paintings. Every day they are evolving into a new visual vocabulary. See? And are interjected with the must-dos of another genre. It's called the Brave New World. No, it's not called the Brave New World. It's called Brave the New World. Yes. This is an image of a painting called To Dream to Soar, which I have dedicated to all my fellow female artists. And this photo, it was taken at the Palm Springs Art Museum where I was in a show. And also it was shown with a body of work of mine a couple of years ago at the Korean Cultural Center in Los Angeles. It is tremendously demanding, challenging, but exciting to be an artist in this fast-moving world where the trends change rapidly. And I have to stay on top of these trends. But to be relevant, but I have to be true to myself. The effort, I give everything I've got to my work. I give everything. The effort I put into a painting is above and beyond, and I put hours and hours of work, regardless of its success or of its failure. But the process is the most exhilarating part. That challenge is what it's all about. And that is the magic of art making. So thank you, Diana, for inviting me to share my story with you this morning and to meet all of you inspiring people and all of you involved with the Inside Edge. And I'll be very happy to be open for questions. Thank you. Yes. Oh.
Well, I'll go with that. The last one was the photograph of you in the gallery next to the painting. Was that?
Yes, I was next to it. Yes.
Have you done any self-portraits like that?
No, but I keep thinking about, I have not done a self-portrait, but I have a lot of different ideas, and they are a little crazy. Like that pose. Yes, but I have not done a self-portrait of myself yet.
I have a comment about that same painting. that
Yes.
you're standing in front of. All you need is a paintbrush in your mouth.
That's true. In fact, I do have a little poster of that Norman Rockwell painting in my studio. And it's very typical of my life. I have to balance everything. During the day, I get up early in the morning to make dinner so I can just pop it in the oven when I come home from work and go to my exercise, my Pilates in the morning to get my blood pumping a little. And then I get off to work and my day moves very quickly. Yes.
I'm moved by the glass and the crystal and surprised that you said it takes time and layer and layer and layer. I would, because of not knowing anything, I would think it would be less and less because of, to have the visual through it, to be you know,
Right, but
transparent.
In
But-
order to get the visual through it, you got to put a layer of paint below. It distorts.
Ah.
Things happen with that. And I wanted to paint everything. I want to paint abstraction and realism. And you can do that with glass. Glass is a vehicle where things distort behind it. Light bounces off of it. Colors bounce off of glass. It's just, it's light. Light is life. Art is life. Yeah.
I just wanted to say your later series reminded me of Picasso. You know, all the, yeah.
Oh, all of the
Yeah.
the movement and the
Yeah.
fracturing,
Yes,
the
yes.
cubist kind of quality to it. Yes.
Who would you say are some of the artists that you have influenced you, or some of your earliest, or a museum that you'd run to if you could? Or...
I would say Caravaggio, for his use of drama in painting, is a big inspiration for me. Artemisia Gentileschi, who is a female Italian Baroque artist who was, I guess, influenced by Caravaggio. And she was one that actually had work, and she lived off of her paintings, very unusual at that time. Recent artists, I love Frank Stella. I mean, there's so many. Cezanne was a big influence. I loved the way he tilted planes. He was like preeminent to Cubism. And in terms of contemporary artists today, well, James Rosenquist, I don't know if you know his work. He's more of a pop artist. He's in all sorts of museums, and you would see his work. He puts in paintings with all different elements into it, like spaghetti and an astronaut, and all things that don't go together. And that's what I like to do in my work, is to put things that don't go together, to unify different things and make it work. So that's what we have to do with our world, correct? To unify everybody, even if we have different opinions. So
I have one question for you.
Yes,
Do you ever have dreams that
Oh, yes.
inspire
Yes.
a painting?
it does. My Metamorphosis, which is, let me see, is the painting with the butterfly and the glass and the ribbon that I sold in Taipei. That was inspired by a dream. And it doesn't make sense. It's out of the ordinary, because why would a lid from a crystal jar be floating up into space, So this was all inspired by a dream. Any other questions?
Well, I imagine that people in this room, like me, are feeling a certain amount of envy. To be able to be lost in a creative pursuit like that, in a timeless dimension. I remember I used to sew, and I taught sewing before I taught cooking, and I would start sewing, and then all of a sudden Paul would be home from work. It'd be 12 hours later, and I was still in my nightgown. I was so lost in the
Well, that's what it's like.
that's what it's like. It's a
Yes.
transcendence
Yes.
that you move into.
Yes.
And I just am so envious of your being able to be just having these things come into your mind and then express them so amazingly.
And you have to be open to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you enter and you start with a blank canvas, I mean, you have to clear your mind of everything and let whatever comes in come into that experience.
And I think besides envy, it's inspiring. It's
Oh.
so the inspiration is incredible, and that you allow it to come through, and you expect it now, which is a beautiful thing. I think that's the way life's supposed to be, and you've opened to it. And if we could all open to and trust it and
Right.
go with it. Congratulations, just fabulous.
Thank you very much.